They told you, Elizabeth, I was the Virgin Queen, the ruler who chose her crown over marriage, a woman whose life was defined by duty and political mastery. But what if the truth was far darker? What if the reason she never married had nothing to do with choice, and everything to do with a secret so dangerous that she forbade anyone from ever examining her body after death? For over 400 years, her tomb has remained sealed, guarding a truth that could rewrite everything you thought you knew about England's most famous monarch. Some historians whisper the secret involves the body of a boy, a mystery so chilling that it has haunted scholars for centuries. In March 1603, something unprecedented occurred. As Elizabeth I lay dying, she issued an order that sent shockwaves through her closest confidantes. Her lady of the bedchamber, one of her most trusted servants, received a direct command: no autopsy, no examination. No one was to look at her body once she was gone. This was not a casual request whispered in delirium. Elizabeth was precise, emphatic, almost desperate. For a ruler whose every move had been calculated, this final command was intensely personal, almost panicked. Kings and queens throughout history often welcomed post-mortem examinations. They wanted to prove they hadn't been poisoned, to leave a record for posterity. But Elizabeth refused. She demanded her body be sealed, hidden forever from the eyes of doctors, historians, or anyone who might uncover what lay beneath the crown and the gown. The question that has haunted historians for more than 4 centuries is simple and terrifying: what was she hiding? The speed of her burial raised immediate suspicion. Within hours of her death, her body was wrapped in treated cloth and placed in a lead coffin, soldered shut before anyone outside her inner circle could see it. Lead coffins were standard for royalty, but the timing was not. Usually, monarchs lay in state for days, even weeks, allowing nobles, clergy, and physicians to pay respects and document their passing. Elizabeth's body was sealed almost instantly. The few servants who prepared her were immediately scattered across England, sent to remote estates with generous pensions and frightening threats to ensure their silence. Nobles who demanded to witness the preparation were turned away. Even the physicians who had attended her final illness were excluded. Within a year, 3 of them were dead under mysterious circumstances. One died of a sudden fever, another fell downstairs and broke his neck, a third succumbed to vague apoplexy. They were not old men. They were experienced doctors in the prime of life. And all perished before they could record their observations. Elizabeth's tomb at Westminster Abbey has remained sealed since 1606, when her half-sister Mary's remains were moved to share the same tomb. Every other English monarch has been studied, exhumed, and analyzed. Richard III was dug up and reconstructed in 2012. Henry II's tomb has been opened. Medieval kings, even Egyptian pharaohs, have been examined. But not Elizabeth. Requests from universities, museums, and researchers have all been denied, whether in 1952, 1975, or 2003. The official reason is respect for the dead. But that excuse rings hollow when other royal tombs have been opened without hesitation. So what makes Elizabeth different? What secret lies in that coffin, hidden for more than 400 years? The answer may trace back to a quiet village called Bisley and a childhood incident that was meant to stay buried forever. Picture London in 1544, a city gripped by plague. Henry V, desperate to protect his 10-year-old daughter, sent her to a countryside manor in Bisley, far from the disease-ridden capital. She was placed under the care of loyal guardians, including her governess, Cat Ashley, devoted to the princess since childhood. The plan seemed perfect: the fresh country air, rigorous education, and safety from disease would prepare Elizabeth for the crown. For weeks, all seemed well. Elizabeth studied Latin, practiced needlework, and played in the gardens with carefully vetted companions. Then disaster struck. The princess fell violently ill with a fever so severe that she appeared to die within days. Panic gripped Cat Ashley and the guardians. The king was en route and failure could mean execution. In desperation, they made an unthinkable choice: conceal Elizabeth's death, and find a replacement to fool the king. But there was no suitable girl. Only one option remained. a red-haired boy who had been Elizabeth's playmate. They dressed him in the princess's finest gowns, braided his hair to match hers, and coached him to mimic her behavior. When Henry VT arrived, the boy performed perfectly. The king left satisfied, unaware that the daughter he came to see was not alive. The deception had worked. But it planted a secret so dark that Elizabeth would carry it with her for life. Perhaps this is why she feared above all else that anyone ever see her body after death. The truth, hidden for centuries, may be more shocking than anyone has dared to imagine. They didn't just choose silence. They chose survival. The frightened boy who had spent one afternoon pretending to be Princess Elizabeth suddenly became her replacement forever. And while this sounds like pure legend, something pulled from the darkest corners of historical rumor, everything changed in 1879. That year, Bisley workers renovating the old parish church uncovered something no one was prepared for: a small, hidden grave sealed deep beneath the floor. Inside was the skeleton of a young girl dressed in clothing so rich, so unmistakably Tudor, that no ordinary villager could have afforded it. Even stranger, the grave had no record. No name. No explanation. Someone had gone out of their way to bury this child in secret, deliberately concealing her from history. And the villagers? They already had a story, one whispered across centuries. They claimed the skeleton was the real Princess Elizabeth, the girl who had died during the plague of 1544, and been quietly replaced by a boy. But the village held an even stranger clue. For centuries, long before the grave was discovered, Bisley celebrated May Day with one of England's most bizarre traditions, dressing a young boy as Queen Elizabeth I, complete with gowns, jewels, and full makeup. No one knew why this small, isolated village insisted on crowning a boy as the Virgin Queen. No other May Day celebration in England included anything remotely similar. When local historians were pressed to explain the origins, they admitted the truth: no one remembered a time when the custom didn't exist. It stretched all the way back to the late 1500s, almost exactly when the real Queen Elizabeth took the throne. Was this odd festival a joke? A coincidence? Or was it a secret confession? Passed down quietly from the only people who knew what happened in Bisley, the year Elizabeth vanished from sight. The story might have died as folklore. But then a surprising figure entered the picture. Bram Stoker, the author of Dracula. Most people know him for fiction, but Stoker spent decades researching real historical mysteries. He was obsessed with imposters, hidden identities, and manipulated royal narratives. When a friend mentioned the strange boy queen ritual in Bisley, Stoker became intrigued enough to investigate personally. He traveled to the village, interviewed elderly locals, inspected parish records, and pieced together fragments of forgotten history. What he found shook him. The timing, the grave, the secrecy, the unexplained May Day tradition, the missing pages in Elizabeth's childhood records. It all aligned too perfectly. Stoker was so convinced that he dedicated an entire chapter of his 1910 book Famous Impostors to the Bisley boy, treating the theory not as rumor, but as legitimate historical evidence. His research sent shockwaves across academic circles, forcing scholars to reevaluate the Queen's life with fresh eyes. And when they looked again, an unsettling pattern began to emerge. If Elizabeth had been replaced by a boy, traces of that deception should appear in eyewitness accounts. And they did. Over and over again. Foreign ambassadors, trained observers skilled at reading people, repeatedly described Elizabeth as unlike any woman they had ever seen. The Venetian ambassador reported that her voice was shockingly loud, deeper than expected, and carried a masculine tone. Another diplomat noted her movements resembled those of a trained soldier, more than a queen raised in delicate courtly traditions. These were not insults. These were confused, professional observations from men who had met dozens of queens, duchesses, and princesses across Europe. The most haunting report came from a Spanish envoy, who wrote only 7 words in a coded dispatch. "Her Majesty's form is not as women's." The statement ended his career. He was immediately recalled to Spain, and never allowed to speak on the matter again. Even those who knew Elizabeth intimately sensed something unusual. Her childhood tutor, Roger Ascham, who adored her, once wrote that she possessed a mind with no womanly weakness, and a persistence equal to any man. In the 16th century, this wasn't praise. It was confusion. Elizabeth excelled in everything expected to limit a woman: languages, theology, philosophy, politics. She out-hunted men, out-rode soldiers, and outworked nearly everyone in her court. Ambassadors described her hands as unusually large, powerful, and masculine. They remarked on her long, confident stride. And towering above many men. She stood shockingly tall for a Tudor woman. Almost unheard of in a century when most women barely reached 5 feet. One detail alone could be dismissed. But all of them together. They painted a picture that terrified European courtiers who couldn't understand the woman, or man, ruling England. And then came the moment that chills historians today. In 1588. As the nation prepared for war against the Spanish Armada, Elizabeth rode to Tilbury in armor, and addressed her troops. She famously declared, "I know I have the body of a weak and feeble woman. But I have the heart and stomach of a king." At face value, it was a stirring speech. But when you know the Besley Boy theory, one line becomes deeply unsettling: the body of a weak and feeble woman. Why would a queen obsessed with controlling her image publicly remind thousands of people that her body was a woman's body? Unless she was emphasizing it deliberately. Reassuring the world of something that wasn't entirely true. Her appearance only deepened the mystery. Elizabeth hid her hair under massive wigs. Supposedly because she had lost it to smallpox. But some historians doubt she ever had the disease, pointing out that no visible scars were recorded. Her towering wigs covered everything: hairline, scalp, natural texture. Her white makeup, made of poisonous lead and vinegar, created a mask that slowly destroyed her real skin. By her final years, witnesses said the makeup had eaten into her flesh. Yet she refused to appear without it. What was so important that she would rather poison herself than reveal what lay beneath? Her clothing told the same story. No monarch in history dressed more strategically. High collars, enormous ruffs, and heavily structured bodices shaped a body no one was allowed to see. Her layers of gowns concealed her torso entirely. And then there was the greatest mystery of all: her refusal to marry. For 44 years, everyone, including Elizabeth's own council, begged her to take a husband and secure the royal bloodline. She refused every prince, every alliance, every proposal. And her excuses never stayed consistent. Historians have argued for emotional, political, or strategic reasons. But there is another. Perhaps she couldn't marry. Not without revealing her true identity on the wedding night. This theory doesn't rely on rumors alone. Spanish intelligence, famed as the best in Europe, uncovered something alarming less than a year into Elizabeth's reign. In a secret coded letter, King Philip III's advisor reported that his spies had learned, with certainty, that Elizabeth would never bear children. She was only 25 years old. No medical reason existed. Yet the Spanish were confident, and terrified. By whatever evidence they had discovered. Something was deeply wrong, something physical, something undeniable. People closest to Elizabeth seemed to know something as well. Her lifelong physician Dr. Wick emerged pale and shaken after a private examination in 1566. He refused to speak about what he saw. A year later, he died suddenly. His notes disappeared. Other doctors who treated her in her final illness also died soon after, their records missing. Coincidence, perhaps, or perhaps a desperate, decades-long effort to bury a secret that could have shattered the crown. Even her relationship with Robert Dudley, the love of her life, deepens the mystery. He knew her better than anyone alive. They rode together every day, shared a childhood trauma, and remained inseparable for decades. Everyone expected them to marry. But Elizabeth never allowed it. In a letter written near the end of his life, Dudley hinted at a secret that bound them. A truth that brought sorrow, not joy. What secret could stop the Queen of England, who could overrule Parliament itself, from marrying the man she loved? Only one explanation fits: Dudley knew the truth of who she truly was. And when Elizabeth finally approached death in 1603, she behaved with a panic that seemed rooted in more than fear. She refused to lie down for nearly 2 weeks, insisting that the bed is a trap. Her body swelled grotesquely. Her face, stripped of makeup, was hidden from nearly everyone. And when she finally died, her chamber was sealed instantly. Witnesses were locked out. Her body was prepared in absolute secrecy. Every servant involved was paid off or sent away. Her coffin has never been opened. Whatever she carried to the grave, England made sure the world would never see.